رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان رمضان يا رمضان.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to In the Light of the Quran, Night 2. We will give an exposition and overview of the recitation for this evening, which is constituted of the last part of Surah Al-Baqarah and incorporates the first portion of Surah Al-Imran. Surah Baqarah, which is the longest surah in the Quran, is constituted of 1/12 of the entire Quran and referred to by the Prophet as Sanamul Quran, the peak of the Quran. In the concluding recitation of last night and the first portion of tonight, the 5 pillars of faith are incorporated. One is Tawheed, the absolute unicity and oneness of Allah and the supremacy of the divine, fundamental aspect of the pillar of the faith of Islam. Number 2 is Salah, which is prayer, and it is the pursuance of spiritual and moral welfare. Then there is Zakah, charity, the pursuance of economic welfare. And this is a particular verse with which the recitation tonight begins about Al-Bir. This verse defines Al-Bir or righteousness, and this notion of Bir captures the essence of Islamic belief and the required spirit of practical manifestation and commitment of that belief. In other words, faith and the action that manifests that belief. There's also reference in detail to fasting and the link between the Quran and the month of Ramadan. In fact, Ramadan is the only month mentioned by name in the Quran, and is mentioned here in relation to the Quran. Thereafter follows reference to pilgrimage. So we see the 5 pillars of faith are dealt with together, as it were, in this segment of the recitation. There's also reference to dietary laws regarding the permissible and the forbidden, the halal and the haram, qisas, penal law, mirath and wasiyah, inheritance and bequests. There are also detailed discussions about some family affairs and about domestic relations. Remembering that we cannot have an improved world until we have an improved society, and we can never have an improved society unless we have improved families, since families are the building blocks of society. We are instructed to do what is right and continuously reminded, in fact, in 2 of the verses together, 6 times, not to transgress the hudud of Allah, the limits set by Allah. There are also detailed discussions about khidbah, about talaq and rida'ah, about proposal to marriage, about divorce, as well as about child rearing. Thereafter follows discussion of issues that have often been overlooked or sometimes deliberately ignored. 1. Spending of wealth or infaq, spending for the benefit of others. Being prepared for qital or jihad, for striving against injustice, evil and corruption. Condemnation of khamr and maisir, of intoxicants and gambling. Caring for the orphans, the yatim, who are often ignored. Breaking the cultural barriers to nikah and ziwaj, to marriage. And also reference to female menstruation or haid. So we can see from the pillars of faith, referring to then thereafter to fundamental aspect of social and familial interaction. It shows the grandeur and the majesty of the Quran, how it deals with a variety of themes captured in a short portion of the Quran. There's also reference to the battle between the forces of Talut and Jalut, of Saul and Goliath, and the defeat of Goliath by Prophet David, peace be upon him. And here we learn the lesson of how the few and the small may overcome the large and the seemingly invincible. Then we go into the last portion of Surah Baqarah, beginning with the 3rd juz of the Quran. And this portion deals generally with the concept of the divine, incidents from the life of the Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, exhortation to generosity, condemnation of usury, regulation regarding loans and contracts, and it concludes with relationships between the human and the divine. So we find here in this portion Ayatul Kursi, the verse of the throne. And this verse has been referred to by the Prophet as A'zamul Ayah, the grand verse of the Quran. The fact that Ayatul Kursi, this verse, has a specific name and a special title indicates its uniqueness and its importance. The verse, in fact, deals primarily with the fundamental aspects of monotheism and provides an unparalleled information regarding the Creator. This is followed by an exhortation and a reminder and an instruction that there is no need for any compulsion in religion, la ikraha fi din, since truth is clear from error and clear from falsehood. And that we need to evolve from the darkness of evil, from the darkness of corruption, from the darkness of superstition and ignorance, to the light of justice, of goodness, through truth. There's also a debate between Prophet Abraham and the king of the Chaldees, Nimrud. And here the debate is regarding the limited authority of man, even of king, and the unlimited authority of the Supreme Being, the Malikul Mulk, the King of all kings and of all dominions. This is followed by instruction to spend in the cause of Allah for the benefit of the family, for the benefit of relatives, of neighbors, for the benefit of the poor, the oppressed, the dispossessed, and to pursue all efforts in the general economic, moral, and spiritual welfare of the larger society. All of this, remembering that a kind word is always better than charity followed by injury. That charity should not be nullified by reminding other people of our generosity, nor by insulting others or by humiliation, nor by showing off, nor by donating that which you yourself would not have accepted. There's then condemnation of riba or usury, a reminder to be conscious of our eventual return to Allah and our ultimate accountability to Him. Then follows what they call Ayatul Dain, chapter 2, verse 282. Ayatul Dain is the longest verse in the Quran, and it deals primarily with loans, contracts, and the documentation of agreements. The Khawatim, or the ending of Surah Baqarah, the last two verses, according to some reports, was revealed while the Prophet, peace be upon him, was on Mi'raj. And it deals with the universal dominion of Allah, description of the faithful as believers, as those who hear and those who obey divine guidance. There's also confirmation that Allah will not test people with trials beyond their capacity. And it concludes with a beautiful series of prayers for maintaining a balanced disposition between the realities of life, the capacity to endure hardship and difficulties, and the plea for divine forgiveness and compassion. That concludes the longest chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah. Then follows Ala Imran, the third chapter in the chronological order of the Quran. Together with Al-Baqarah, Ala Imran is referred to by the Prophet as Az-Zahrawan, the two bright ones. There are four primary discourses in this chapter. In the recitation tonight, the first 30-odd verses, Discourse 1 is dealt with. Discourse 1, this portion of the recitation, was revealed after the Battle of Badr, early in the Medinan period of the prophetic mission. And here reference is made to Allah as the knower, the creator, the fashioner, the proportioner, and the designer of existence. That we accept His guidance and we commit ourselves not to deviate from His guidance. Also, we acknowledge our eventual accountability to Him. There's instructions for us not to be overcome with materialism as to forget the real purpose of life and the greater purpose of our existence. Exhortation to be patient, exhortation to be truthful, to be humble, to be generous, and of course, to be repentant, as all human beings err, and the best of those who err are those who repent and rectify themselves. Finally, recognition of Allah's authority and a reminder that izzah or honor comes from Allah, the creator of all existence, who is the knower of the most apparent and the most hidden. Shukran. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.